Good evening. You're watching WeatherFlow's WindAlert Tropics update. It is about 8:30 p.m. on Sunday, January the 10th. And yes, we are actually talking about the tropics in January, believe it or not. We've been watching a low pressure system, which is here. This is compliments of the EOD world view from NASA, so we get a nice snapshot of a high definition photo of the North Atlantic waters today. And here's our system here as we see cooler air coming down from the north and battling with warmer air coming up from the south. There's a lot of mixing going on here, so for right now, it's staying extratropical. This actually started over in the Bahamas and swept across Bermuda, which is right about here with gale force winds. It's now 900 miles east of Bermuda, and it's holding maximum winds of hurricane force. It's going to be heading off to the east-southeast, which makes this area of great interest because it's going to be heading towards a warmer environment, the sea surface temperatures and warmer air possibly being able to wrap around the core. Right now, it is struggling a little bit with some drier air trying to pull in and around towards the center. So might be a little bit of a hurdle for the system to be slower to develop. So it's always something to take a look at. Let's go to the Atlantic 5-day outlook from the National Hurricane Center, which is up the chance. It is now at a 20% chance of development in the next 48 hours and 40% chance over the next 5 days. So we're the current track for the National Hurricane Center keeps it going to the southeast and then eventually east towards Africa. It won't make it to Africa because there's a high pressure ridge building off the coast, and it's going to probably push it up to the northeast over time, but not before it actually is able to obtain possible tropical characteristics to it. Here's our water vapor imagery, and you can see the system right here. You can see that the warmer colors with that drier air trying to pull up and around the core. It may be able to overcome that in time, but you can see here a little bit of a flare-up of convection tried to wrap around what looked like a little eye wall trying to develop today. And then that got dissipated with some cooler air and some drier air actually pulling into the center as well. So at least a first attempt for this storm to become subtropical or tropical in nature as some of that convection fired off. Here's Datascope from WeatherFlow, and at nighttime we have to flip to the infrared version instead of the high def because it's nighttime, of course. And you can kind of see what's going on here. Here's our cooler air wrapping up from the south, and here's cooler air coming down from the north. And it's meeting right about here. So we talked about in our last update that this entire area of the Atlantic is what's called a baroclinic zone where fronts form, and that has a lot to do with the battle between cooler air and warmer air. So the core of the system is staying intact. The surface low, the vorticity, is actually holding up pretty well, and even at the mid levels. And we'll look at that in just a moment as well. But as this storm heads down into this area, we may see a name come out of it. Right now, one of the main reasons why this system has been so successful at keeping its vorticity and spin is because it's in what's called a Rex block. When you have high pressure to the north, low pressure to the south, traveling at the same time, they're sort of connected. They're almost symbiotic in their relationship, and that really feeds this low pressure to the south. This low actually feeds the high for its outflow up high, and as the air goes up high and then sinks again, it comes down, wraps around clockwise from the northeast, and then wraps around the storm. And this is what we call a Rex block. So you can see the direction of this high pressure is taking it this way to the east-northeast. This low pressure is actually heading to the southeast, but they will complement each other as this storm continues to head in this direction. Now here's our frontal boundary. You can see the stationary boundary extending out to the east, our cold front drawn down from the south, and that's why it's remaining extratropical or baroclinic in nature. So our sea surface temperatures, this system is actually right about here, and it's going to be heading down in this direction. So let me make the little line skinnier. So these waters right now, we have 23 degrees Celsius in this band, we have 24 degrees in this band, and then we have 25 degrees Celsius in this band. So we have 73 degree water, 75 to 76 degree water, and we have 77 to 78 degree water down in this environment. So the further that this storm heads down in this direction, the warmer the waters, the more fuel that this storm can get from the surface, and the warmer the air will help wrap around the core. So we always watch for the environment to be favorable or conducive for development. The upper level shear environment is also favorable because it is not there's not a lot of upper level shear to tear cloud tops off. So if the storm tries to get some convection wrapped around, it might be a little bit more successful at it. And this map is a little confusing, but the center of low is right here. It's heading in this direction, and this area is actually more conducive for development because the upper level shear isn't tearing the cloud tops off. So that's one other piece of evidence that we always look at. The other thing that we are looking at here is that dry air is a result of the Saharan air layer. And what this is Saharan dust blowing off the deserts, off the mountains and off the deserts out over the ocean. This layer is suspended about 18,000 feet up, or 500 millibars in meteorology. And this area actually helps to dissipate many tropical developments off the coast of Africa, especially during the Cape Verde season in the summer. In the wintertime, it continues to draw dust, this Saharan desert dust up into the atmosphere. And right now it's moderate to thick, only for so far, but this area is going to be relaxing in its dust because there's a high pressure ridge that's developing here that's going to keep that dust from coming off the desert. We may get a little bit of a swath off the western coast of Africa, but for the most part it's going to be dissipating. So what we have right now is we have some residual scatter in the mid-levels of the atmosphere here, and that's sort of pulling up into the storm, and that's going to keep it on the weaker side, at least for now, because of that. Now if we get some of this low-level troughing and thunderstorming coming up along the cold front, we could see some of that dust precipitate down to the surface and get out of the way for this storm, to be able to get some of that warmer air and moisture wrapped around in the core of it. So that's another thing that we always look at, and it's amazing that we're looking at in January for a tropical system that far over to the east because of that reason. Here's another look at that dry air being wrapped up in the core and water vapor imagery from the tropical Atlantic. And then here's our animated GIF for the rainbow tops, and you can see the core of the low is actually holding up pretty well. It's trying to get some storming around it. There's a little bit of activity going on. We see this warm air coming up from the south as per earlier. You just get a better image there. And another thing I always like to look at is the advanced scatterometer. That was in our last update. However, today's passes, they sort of go by and they swath the planet, and they missed the pass, they missed the area today. So we didn't really get a whole lot except for right about here where that crease is along the warm air and the cool air mixing together, and we have about 30 to 40 knots along that line, and that's just all kind of convergent zone where the air is trying to remove the cooler air is trying to remove the warm air. So not much help on that, but we can look at what the numerical models are saying for development. Here's the GFS for tonight, and as we go into time, we see that right now the system is at 987 millibars. If we look here, here's the surface map from earlier. That's 987 millibars, so the pressure is kind of low on this. It's very close to acquiring a name because of that, and we're going to be watching to see what happens. Now the GFS keeps this at 986, and then it's actually keeps it at 989, 988, so it holds its strength for the next couple of days. And when it gets down to here on Tuesday, if enough warm air is wrapped around it and it is holding tropical storm force winds, we may see that name by Tuesday, but too early to call it just yet. But as time goes on, you can see that high pressure ridge develop off the coast of Africa, and it's going to take this storm and push it off to the northeast. So that's the GFS run. Let's take a look at the Euro run. Everybody likes the Euro models because they tend to do so well in this kind of forecast. And here we go. This one's going to be pretty much in agreement with the GFS. So here's its current pressure at 982. This is from 12 o'clock today, so it was estimating the pressure at that time. And as we go to 12 o'clock tomorrow, here's where it actually lowers the pressure, which means it goes through a strengthening phase tomorrow. When the sun comes up and things get warmer, it may actually intensify just a little bit. And as it heads towards Africa, there's a high pressure ridge. It actually holds its strength, and then it heads off to the northeast, as does the GFS. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the system. It's pretty interesting to see this time of the year, and we don't know when or if it's going to become subtropical or tropical storm Alex, but we're definitely something to keep an eye on since it is January the 10th. So that will do it for the Tropics update, and I will be back on tomorrow night for another, and we'll be watching this all day tomorrow. So thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.